What is systematic racism in education? Systematic racism is so embedded in systems that it often is assumed to reflect the natural, inevitable order of things. Slavery, explicitly supported by laws, endured for 250 years in the United States and was followed by almost 100 years of Jim Crow laws, often enforced by terror that were deliberately designed to restrict the rights of African Americans, including the rights to vote, work, and get an education. Although civil rights legislation in the 1960s made it illegal to discriminate, enforcement of these anti discrimination laws has been inadequate. 12 racial inequities and their ensuing socioeconomic and health consequences persist because of deeply rooted unfair systems that sustain because of deeply rooted unfair systems that sustain the legacy of former overly discriminatory practices, policies, laws, and beliefs. At times, these systems and structures, which are rooted in beliefs in white supremacy, operate unconsciously or unintentionally, but nevertheless effectively, to produce and sustain racial discrimination. Systematic racism systematically and pervasively puts black people, indigenous people, and other people of color at compounded disadvantage within society. It often can be traced to deliberate acts of discrimination in the past, such as laws mandating residential segregation by race, once in place. However, systemic racism is often self perpetuating, with persistently damaging effects on health even after the explicitly discriminatory measures are no longer in effect. The terms systematic, structural, and institutional racism are closely related concepts were first used by social scientists. Sociologist David William and others 614 have traced the key concepts back to the distinguished social scientist W.E.B. Du Bois, who wrote around 1900 about how racial discrimination was institutionalized within multiple sectors of society and was self perpetuating. Ed Douglas Massey and Nancy Denton noted the institution of racial discrimination within large sectors of the American society, including the labor market, the educational system, and the welfare bureaucracy, and racial. Geoff Fagan and Kimberly Ducey wrote, system racism includes the complex array of anti-black practices, the unjustly gained political economic power of whites, the continuing economic and other resources inequalities along racial lines, and the white racist attitudes created to maintain and rationalize white privilege and power. Systemic here means that the core races realized and manifested in each of society. Major parts the economy, politics, education, religion, the family, reflecting the fundamental reality of system racism. Eduardo Bonilla Silva discussed how persistent racial inequality reflects the continued existence of a racial structure in society. He noted that, in contrast with the Jim Crow period, the structures maintaining contemporary racial operation are increasingly covert, are embedded in normal operations of institutions, avoid direct racial terminology, and are invisible to most whites. Examples of structural and systematic racism. Several examples of system racism are presented here. They have been selected on the basis of their importance in perpetuating racial injustice with health implications and for diversity of the sectors and systems involved. Health implications are generally discussed later. Political disempowerment. Political disempowerment through voter suppression and gerrymandering are an important historical and contemporary manifestation of system racism. The legal right for all men to vote was secured in 1870. During the nearly 100-year era of Jim Crow laws,